Great. Hello, and welcome to our first webinar in the series Raising Resilient Kids. Thank you for joining us. We're part of the Psychology Foundation of Canada, and we're so excited to be connecting with you today. So we are offering monthly webinars that will be providing valuable insight and information to our key adult caregivers, including teachers, early childhood educators, nurses, and of course parents, and really anybody who lives and works with babies, school-age children, and youth. We think
and any mental health professional who supports parents in school communities.
Absolutely. So we're hoping that our webinars are going to be resonant. They'll resonate with you. And if you've got ideas for future topics, please be sure to let us know. Next month, we're excited to be exploring parent and child attachment styles. So please stay tuned for that. So at this point, I will share with you our presentation and talk with you a little bit about the Psychology Foundation of Canada. So presumably you know who we are, but if you don't, we want to let you know that we're an organization where we believe that every child achieves, we're hoping that every child achieves their optimal mental health. This is our vision. And we work to fulfill our vision by nurturing resilience in children. So we're talking about resiliency today, and it's really a core aspect of what we do. We work to ensure that our key adult caregivers in a child's life have the tools, resources, and anything else to support and promote children's mental well-being. We do this by delivering and implementing our psychology-based proven programs and resources through a vast network of child-serving community partners throughout Canada. And our community obviously includes you, so thank you again for joining us. We will provide more information on our training programs and resources towards the end of the webinar, so please stay tuned. And like I said, if you've got any particular questions, please ensure that you email my colleague Brianna, and this is Brianna Leal at psychologyfoundation.org. Okay, so today we are talking about parenting resilient children and youth at home and at school. So I'm delighted that Dr. Ester Cole can join us today. Thanks, Esther. Thanks, Dr. Cole. So Dr. Ester Cole is a psychologist in private practice in Toronto, providing services to school-aged children, youth, families, and schools. She was the chair of the Psychology Foundation of Canada and the Parenting for Life program, and the past president of the Ontario Psychological Association and the Canadian Association of School Psychologists. She's published and lectured widely and has been active on committees provincially, nationally, and in the American Psychological Association. And now I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Cole.
Thank you very much. I am very pleased that I participate in the first webinar for the Psychology Foundation, and we call it Knowledge Translation so that it's user-friendly, and there are many resources that you're going to hear about later on. It is my understanding that you received the slides for the PowerPoint presentation, so I will elaborate on them. Basically, the objectives, as I delineated on this slide, is to support the skills and competencies that promote resiliency in school-age children and youth, both in and out of school, and to address some aspects of how self-esteem, social skills, self-advocacy, and learning habits contribute to the topic, and how together we can strengthen and celebrate our children's successes in all arenas. The concept of resiliency is very popular these days, but we want to make sure that we keep in mind the fact that it's our ability to adapt when we have pebbles in life's road. We teach children bounce back strategies so that they are going to enhance their ability to cope with inevitable difficulties or challenges that come upon us, and we know that as adults. So later on, you'll hear the Psychology Foundation website is full of resources, as we both said, and this is just the address. I want to start with this because this is really quite universal. I created these 4 balls as they interact with one another. We have a school, family, the child at different developmental stages, and messages from society about what it means. And as a mental health professional, my colleagues and I, together with everybody else, are in the middle of these 4 balls that we are constantly juggling. And if I gave this presentation, for example, 20 years ago, before technology was such an integral part of messaging and communication, it might have been a very different discussion. Maybe in 20 years, who knows? Maybe the same 4 balls will have new meanings that we don't really foresee now. So we'll start with the family, and every family is special and unique. And every family go through dynamic changes. Our children grow, we lose extended family members, we gain family members. Our children are at different developmental stages, and consequently, we have to adapt. And some families are finding it easier than others. With all the things that are part of life stress on a daily basis. So this is one unit of a culture of the family and the messaging we receive. The other ball is the child, I should say child and adolescent. And we developed many resources, as I noted, including booklets that tapped adolescent needs, child needs. They are all related to success and attachment and very specific tools that can continue to enhance a child's well-functioning and well-being. Now, school, of course, is the hub in the heart of communities. And in schools, we don't only learn, we socialize, we receive affirmation, we develop new competencies, and we learn to self-advocate. Some children and youth do it better than others. And of course, because school represents the connection in communities, it's very important for families, for parents, caregivers in the family to develop partnerships with educators so that they are going to be able to collaborate on behalf of the child in concert in a way that strengthens the child's ability to adapt and to achieve the kind of benchmarks that both families and educators hope for their students and their children. Society, the 4th ball, gives us increasingly complex messages, but also maybe sources of joy and wonder and motivation to experience and travel. None of us, mental health professionals, parents, educators, are as good as all of us. That is to say, we have to make sure that we collaborate and participate to the best of our ability to make sure that we acknowledge successes, and if we have questions, and if we have sources of stress that are coming home, that we learn to problem solve in a way that continues to strengthen the child's motivation to succeed every day in the world called school. And it is, as we all know, a world that we spend many hours in every single day. Now, society gives us messages, and I want to talk a little bit about technology as well. On one hand, society is celebrating people who learn to be independent, productive members of society and contribute to it. Our parents are modeling Our schools are modeling. There are excellent projects about social justice and good citizenship. At the same time, technology and the virtual world that our children, even in the home, have access to that we might not even know about, can be a source of stress. And we hopefully have open communication that teaches us when we need to intervene, when we need to listen, when we have interpretive listening instead of directive listening that immediately jumps to, you have a problem, let me solve it for you, let me give you 10 suggestions. And maybe just like adults, sometimes your child just wants to be listened to with love and empathy in a very busy parental working day. So the issue of the messaging in society, now we are, for example, talking about the coronavirus. If we overdo the misinformation and we don't focus on what can be done and how we can do things, that can increase stress. The converse is if we make sure that we have a balanced perspective and we are cautious and careful about what is in our domain. So these are the 4 components. Now, the children, resiliency in children and youth, by and large, has to do with 4 clusters. And the clusters, there are many others, but those are kind of key ones that when you screen the literature, the evidence-based literature, this is what we come up with. The first one is the ability to forge relationships and reach out. That is important for all of us across the age groups. It means that we have a sense of belonging when we do that, when we forge relationships, that we believe that having people out there that know us enough that we can trust that they will help us solve our problems. If we take on ourselves too much and we try to solve all the problems by ourselves, we become extra stressed. And there are some parents who feel that they have to be the problem solvers for everything. And without learning to reach out, we are modeling for our children the same expectations sometimes. So it is important to remember that it's not reaching out means that you're constantly dependent. It means that you learn to exercise self-advocacy by doing so. And you say to yourself, there are things I can solve by myself, but if I want to teach problem solving to my children, I need to tell them that sometimes questions such as, we are planning a holiday, what do you think? What do you think you can help me with? What do you think we should do? Is a way of reaching out. Or acknowledging that you're tired, acknowledging that you have much to do that is unusual given stress at work, is something that can help you balance, and you'll see that children learn to accommodate. The same is true for relationships at work. So reaching out is not a weakness. It's part of our needs in order to preserve self-care and be productive and motivated to continue. We can't run on empty. The second component is the emotional skills. Our ability to deal with emotions that are complex sometimes, that overwhelm us, but we need to make sure that we learn not to overgeneralize and to say, these are things that I don't have control over, but these are things I do have control over. By doing that, I remind myself to self-regulate better and to be able to put things in better perspective. So the emotional skills, it's not that people shouldn't be angry or stressed. It's a question of, we have all these emotions. How do we solve them without them becoming so overwhelming that we feel that they are governing our lives, particularly when they are not very positive emotions? The third component is competence. For me to think, not because when I'm 5 or 6 and I make a drawing, my parent says this is the nicest drawing ever. I know that I'm not Picasso when I'm 10 and I hear the same words, or maybe I am, but not yet. So it's a question of how can I learn to identify my own skills and strengths so that I can think about my own abilities. If I do that, and I can say, I might not be competent in A, B, and C, but I can be very competent if I do something else. For us as parents, not to see competence as related to what we think is competence, but to have a dialogue is a very good example of strengthening our ability to self-evaluate as children. So this influences what happens. And if you think because you had one failure in something that you are not good at it, as children say, I'm not good at X subject, or I'm not a good friend, they label themselves negatively. And if I label myself negatively, I don't really have many reasons to think that I can modify this label. So it is the tools and the skills. So if a child says to me, I'm not really very popular, listening and saying, and what area are you feel this way? Why do you feel this way? What do you think can be done? How can I help you? Should not be the first, but the last point. That might lead to strategies that the child didn't think about. And you are going to learn about your own child as well. Now, the fourth one is very important, and it has to do with optimism. Now, when we talk about optimism, everybody wants to be optimistic, of course, but let's convert it into what it means in a way that can be actually learned as well. When I say I'm optimistic, what it means is that I also have realistic thinking about what can be done. Maybe I can't climb Mount Everest, but I can realistically climb a hill. And that is a good beginning because I identify for myself what I can do, and I have a positive attitude that I will probably reach and evaluate what I can do and go from there. So thinking about the present, what can I do at present? The other one is to look for solutions that you are seeking, actions and steps that you can exercise that will lead you there. The other one is you need a broader purpose. How do we position ourselves? So when we position ourselves as part of a group, the group is a family, it's a group of friends, it's school, it's after school activities, it's a variety of groups. I feel as if I have a purpose to contribute to the common good. And when I do that, I'm starting to feel better because I contribute. And if I contribute, even if I'm not feeling the most popular student or the best athlete, I still feel that I know where to go with it. This is important because sometimes people are focusing so much on the wrong in the past that they are forgetting that really optimism is we have to nurture our garden and we have to mend our behavior in that garden. Sometimes the garden is disappointing us because the roses didn't grow, but sometimes actually just focusing realistically on what I can do in that garden is making me feel as if my optimism is leading thing. I want to talk now about relationships and assets. And the strength of the parent-child relationship is, of course, what nurtures our being. It's developing trust. It means that I know that regardless of what life throws at me, in the schoolyard or in class or in any setting, there is going to be somebody I can trust and rely on. The second thing is, of course, having confidence in social skills. The confidence is before you behave in a way that assumes that something that happened yesterday and it's your perception that you were rejected is actually what is going to happen today as well. Your ability to ask for help is part of the relationships, and understanding your personal boundaries, whether you need time alone at any age, whether you see yourself as somebody who needs downtime, where you see yourself as somebody who can both contribute and have time alone, and a sense of belonging, are all assets that are exercised both verbally and non-verbally in a variety of situations. Now, the emotional skills are, of course, the positive self-esteem and a self-concept. Ability to use humor is always helpful because it kind of helps us come down from a roller coaster that was scary. Ability to calm oneself, and there are excellent role-playing exercises, school activities. All the learning that is done in many schools is community-based, in the sense that the class becomes a community, and subgroups are constantly being together about problem solving. Seeing the hopeful side of challenges, the half full glass, is always something that our grandparents are telling us, our teachers are telling us. It's good to tell us to oneself, and knowing how to act appropriately in situations so that we are able to regroup. Competence asset have to do with what we call executive functioning skills. What are my goals? If I see something and I say, I don't really know how to solve it, I'm giving up, that's not planning. So first of all, what are my goals? Identify, what do I want to achieve today, this afternoon, this morning, next week. Problem solving and reasoning, what is practical, as I mentioned, an ability to look after oneself and be independent. This is something that we constantly tell our children, but it's a very good idea to say, do I really modify my behavior as a parent to allow more of that as our children grow older? And when you see something positive, call it. Not to say I love you, they know that you love them only. Not only I love you, but also when I see you do this and this and this, I'm proud of you because, and then you tell them what it is. Many parents are saying to another parent what they observed, but say it to the child because it's positive reinforcement. And not giving up perseverance is very important in order not to be discouraged prematurely. Critical thinking skills are embedded in everything in the curriculum, and discussions at home reinforce good judgment. Assets including ability to judge what risks are, because bravery has its limits, and peer pressure sometimes makes us feel as if we should forget our instincts. Positive childhood experiences always help one calm themselves. A supportive family and community, being generous and supportive of others also contributes to optimism. Now, each one of us has a different kind of temperament. So the temperament we have doesn't mean that it has to be replaced. It means that aspects of resiliency need to be factored in to whether we have a particular intensity, whether we are people who are perfectionistic, and if you get a 90 on a test and you fret and dwell of why didn't you get more than that, you are not seeing the forest for the trees. So verbalizing, modeling communication that is flexible, and we are able to constantly reach out. There are some children and adolescents who require some help, and it's a good idea to acknowledge that it's just another process that will help them deal with temporary difficulties in life. And some of the resources we developed here in the Psychology Foundation are helpful for that as well. Building resiliency and having all the positives that we mentioned still mean that we also have to factor in positive discipline and clear rules. If a child works towards a particular goal with positive reinforcement, they are more likely to learn to internalize it and make it their own kind of strategy. Saying to somebody, don't, sometimes it's obviously necessary, but at the same time, if we say don't because, and instead of that, what can you do? And here are some rules. I suggest that just the way there are rules in school and positive discipline, it's very important for parents to develop some clear rules with input from the children too. You will be surprised if you did not do that yet, that actually your children and adolescents will contribute to the family rules. So I can't tell a child to have a rule that I myself don't exercise and model. The other thing is that communication at school is such a powerful workshop by itself. So it's not just the verbal communication, but also the nonverbal. And if I go out to the schoolyard for recess and perceive that nobody wants to play with me and they are rolling their eyes when I approach them and turn their back, that is a form of communication that unfortunately enhances not the right factors that promote self-concept and positive self-esteem. Learning skills and school self-esteem are so important. Which is why I now moved to learning how to learn. So I listed, as you can see, 8 components on the screen that are all interrelated. And what I would like just very briefly to tell you is that if we study skills, learning how to learn by itself, it's not as productive as making sure that it's interwoven to each one of the classes I take, because then I can see it in action. It's a difference between talking about running and exercises running in order to participate in a marathon. So class participation, active learning, even my physical body and the way I don't sit in my chair or look as if I'm about to fall asleep makes me feel as if I'm part of the collective. Time management and organizational skills. I want to just mention briefly homework, because this is a hot spot in most households I know, and I know many. Now, I would like to suggest that we keep in mind that many kids and adolescents, if you say, why do you have homework? They are trying to exercise some humor, but many of them are saying, I don't know. So it's important to sit down and have a discussion, not because there is a project tomorrow or a test tomorrow and I need to prepare for it, but really, what is the purpose of homework? I do not know many children and adolescents who are saying, this is an extension of what we learned in class, and I'm going to strengthen my skills by doing that. This is not the way we talk around the dinner table. So if you feel that it comes better from the teacher, maybe you should have a communication with the teacher in order to make sure that there is some version that is easy for the child or the adolescent not only to hear, but also to buy into and contribute and have their opinion about. There is a difference between note-making and note-taking. The older the student is, the more you are asked not only to write verbatim what is on the smart board or the blackboard, but to make it in your own words. How we prepare, all of those components are worthy in discussing at school, and teachers are doing a very fine job at making sure that they are available for consultation. but you'll need a little help, because if I'm an adolescent and the teacher says, I'm going to stay after school, come and see me if you need to, many are saying, well, it's not so cool to be seen going to talk to the teacher, whereas other students are finding it okay. I very briefly want to discuss, I talked about self-esteem and self-concept. So concept is my attributes, the way I describe them. Self-esteem is how I evaluate those attributes. So you can have a child who's a student in a gifted class, but if they go out to the schoolyard or go to the lunchroom and nobody wants to sit with them or talk to them, that has a very different meaning. So how do I perceive myself, and what is my ideal self? The bigger the discrepancy, the more work there is to do about talking to our children, communicating with the school, seeing pathways that are going to shrink the discrepancy. The media is certainly giving us all kinds of sometimes unrealistic versions of what is an ideal self. All kinds of chat rooms, communication online are not a substitute for face-to-face study habits that are done in concert with a group, or a communication and exercising of social skills that gives us feedback that we can strive by being part of a collective. So here are some examples of interrelated factors in the curriculum that schools are definitely a partnership that promotes some of these components, and you want to discuss how they can be extended to home life, or how sometimes good success stories at home should be conveyed to teachers, and not only factual information or things that we are not very clear about or pleased with. High self-esteem, when I distilled what we learned through many years of collecting data, interviews, research, here are some components. It means high self-esteem that we all want for ourselves and our children is that I feel capable, not only that other people tell me. It helps, but that I can learn to say it to myself, that I feel worthy of good things happening to me. The second one is to identify, as I said, that I possess skills, that I can identify them instead of saying I don't have any. So helping by probing what they are, not because my parents or others are feeling that I should have them, but what is important to me. That I believe that I'm able to achieve. That is such an important component across all stages of learning and work. There are children who come into the classroom and in their head they have a little voice that says, please, please, teacher, don't ask me to give an answer, because I'm sure that it's going to be either looked at or frowned at by my peers, or I'm not sure really. So that I am able to achieve is helping me to learn to achieve. That I feel significant and powerful. What a very, very sad thing it is when our children don't feel this way. So how do we partner to strengthen that kind of child to feel that when they were significant enough, that when they were sick for a week and they come back to school, that people are saying, I feel included and you missed me. I was feeling left out, but now you welcomed me back. Feeling that I have control over some things, that my control is not because of the report card marks I get, but because I can monitor and evaluate some aspects of myself. Obviously, they have to do with the age I'm in. Now, what we hope is that I touch on highlights, that if we plan early, it helps us. I think it's really important to know our own stress level, that we can learn anti-stress techniques. But when I say anti-stress techniques, I'm not talking about just doing one kind of technique, and if it doesn't work for me. So if you know, if you feel that doing yoga is fine for you, terrific. But on the other hand, if it's unrealistic and you find that you are stressed about the fact that you did not have time to do yoga, or that you are sitting on the mat at yoga and you are finding that your mind is racing about all the things on your checklist that you did not complete, it defeats the purpose. So you have to be flexible in saying what is realistic. Everybody has an individualized kind of technique that works for them. Not to give up prematurely, just the way we tell our children. Relaxation alone or any recipe alone is not sufficient. Make sure that you experiment. The time units are secondary. People are saying, yeah, but I can't do it because. So try to park the yeah, but and say, I can't do it for half an hour. I want to go to the gym, but it's unrealistic for me to go in the evening or early in the morning. And there are all the stresses that we know about. But what is realistic is for me to do something for myself without accountability to others for 15 minutes a day. And how you do it and when you do it is something that only you can identify in order to make sure that you actually can continue to exercise it. You know that many people are doing all kinds of New Year resolutions and they give up very quickly because it makes them feel guilty that they did not live up to their own resolutions, and then that stress becomes cumulative. It's a snowball. So make sure that you acknowledge your characteristics, your lifestyle, your reality. We are hopefully collectively saying to the children, and we are part of social justice as a society by contributing, by feeling worthy and powerful, and by knowing that early stress can alter our ability to cope with stress later on. You know, as well as I know, as everybody else know, that you can have the same situation for two co-workers. One is finding it as if it's the end of the world that it happened, and another one is saying, well, it's a little bump in the road and I am going to cope with it. I don't like it, it's disappointing. What is my tolerance for frustration? So there are situations we can't do about, but you don't want the clouds from the past to infringe on your present situation. So we really have to plan what was in the past that I can't do very much about anymore. Maybe sometimes process it and put it in perspective. What can I do at present? And break down the present. This is your garden into small units and plan for the future. In order to plan for the future without the clouds of the past and the disappointments of the past infringing on the future, I have to monitor the present in small increments and feel as if I have control over some things. The way I talk to myself in my head, the way I myself say, am I over exaggerating? Am I having overgeneralizations? These are things that contribute to a better balance in self-regulation. The way I talk to myself and think contributes to the way I feel. And that is interrelated with my body reactions. Some people, when they are very stressed, as you know, have kind of tense muscles. Others have a dry mouth. Others have palms that are becoming sweaty. You feel as if you're lethargic. So everybody has their own reactions. It's universal. What we need to know is that they are contributing to the fourth variable, which is how our behaviors are impacted by it. And when in our head, we say to ourselves, this has been a terrific plan. I'm sure that I'm going to ace the exam today. I'm coming into it with a lot more optimism and better emotional regulation. I'm more likely to be motivated to succeed. My body helps me. I feel more energized, and my behavior is going to be probably more productive. It doesn't mean that I succeed in everything, but it means that it's a beginning towards resiliency and adaptability. I want to leave this before we open to questions, because I thought all the talk and all the very, very terrific skills and bodies of knowledge, how can I put them so that they are easy to interrelate with what we are talking about today? So if I put a student at any age in the middle, what are the kind of 4 pillars, not silos, but 4 pillars that are part of the framework that can help? One is language, and language is opening doors for us. That's the way we communicate. I used bilingual skills. They can be trilingual skills. The reason I did that is because sometimes, wrongly, people who are coming from another country or other countries to a school, they feel that they should stop reading to their children in their first language in order to promote their English facility. In fact, the opposite is what we learned over time, that the more I know vocabulary and expression that is fluid and allows me to retrieve information in one language, the better I'm going to be at learning it in a new language. So multilingualism is allowing us to also interact with our children, teach them songs, music, art, anything, humor. So any language comes together, as long as we remember that it's a way of opening doors for the present and the future. The other one is self-esteem and validation at home. Self-esteem and validation at home comes back to the point I mentioned about the importance of partnership between home and school, and a communication that is seen as proactive and monitored. And I assure you that there is nothing nicer for a teacher to receive an email or a phone call or face-to-face saying, there's nothing wrong. I just want to tell you that my child came home yesterday and said, this was the best discussion we had all year. And thank you for doing that. I think it promotes open doors for communication for the future. The third one is the study skills, motivation to learn. There are children who are very, very capable, but somehow they did not make the transition over the years that the more learning you do, the more complex the curriculum becomes, the more you need to have study skills and growth goals that you can monitor without becoming stressed. Because if the world is starting to tell you that you're not up to par in your learning, it has ramifications not only on your report card, but also on your a sense of self and how you communicate socially, academically, and your decision making, not to mention your emotional well-being. And the importance of social belonging and social skills cannot be emphasized enough, as this allows us to interrelate all the other factors to it. So I will stop here and see what we can do in order to answer some of your questions.
Great. Thanks, Dr. Cole. So we're just going to open it up to questions now. You will find the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And so if you feel you've got a question, here, Dr. Cole is here and ready to answer them. So please just click the button and type your question in and we'll see it. But maybe as we're waiting for some questions, I'd like to say thank you so much, Dr. Cole. I really learned a lot from your presentation. I think you covered a lot of ground today. And in particular, I thought that you gave some really great insight into how parents and professionals can really support mental well-being in kids and youth. And I particularly, what I took away from your presentation was the importance of learning to learn.
That's correct.
So I thought that was
You're
something
a good
that,
student.
thank you. I thought that was a really important piece, just as far as helping young people understand and learn time management, organizational skills. The other core piece that I took away was just self-regulation in ourselves. So if we're able to understand what stresses us, what are our triggers, what are some of our challenges, then we could in turn model that to kids. So I really appreciated that. And in fact, it made me think about a resource that the Psychology Foundation of Canada has that's called Stress Strategies.
That's correct.
So stressstrategies.ca is a website that we developed in partnership with Great West Life. And what it does is it looks at various stress management strategies and helps to walk through some real life examples. And we've received some great feedback. It's very helpful for adults. It's our primary adult kind of program that we offer.
And it was refined over the years, and it's one of the more popular programs, as I understand, that is now expanding nationwide.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a way to look at managing your own stress. So we're open for questions. I have a few. So I thought that I can throw out a couple of questions. So you talked a lot about the sense of belonging.
Yes.
So I wonder, as a parent, recognizing the importance of the peer group, can you speak a little bit more to how can I support my child if that sense of belonging might be challenged, if the peer group might be having potentially a negative effect on the child?
I think that first, obviously at different age groups, there are different meanings. And I think that one of the things parents can do is to have an open house where they invite children to come. If I as a parent criticize, very likely for all kinds of reasons, a friend, then my child might want to go to somebody else's house instead of having the child bring friends home. So having an open house means that the child is in their safe environment, and when they are in their safe environment, you are going to be able to observe how they interact with others. And there are children who are bullied. That's another topic all by itself. And I think it's really important to convey the message and to involve the teacher that everybody has a right to learn, and it is the school's responsibility and our responsibility as parents to promote anti-bullying. Bullying can be, as you know, both face-to-face or it can be online.
Right.
The other thing is that some children have after-school clubs, some children have daycare, so there are many, it's not necessarily always related to how much money we have to enroll our children in a particular expensive activity, but find an activity that meets your child's needs, that allows for socialization. Because if a child's, when I say a child, it's of all ages, spends too much time in the room only communicating online, or feeling sorry for themselves because they were defriended, that has the same kind of negative associations for them. So are you a household that has discussions about these things without criticizing? And you might learn from your child things that you didn't know. And at times you need to talk to the support staff at school, the guidance, the school psychologist, the school social worker, whoever is available to facilitate that.
Great. Yeah, and I think that you've just also nicely re-emphasized the idea of the social support, that social network, that having the open communication with the other adults in your child's life who are coming into contact, that I think is a critical piece, and certainly something with the Psychology Foundation that we really promote.
That's right.
Okay, great. We've got a question here from Susan. Okay, so Susan says that she wants to better understand how to encourage self-care in children, how to help kids prioritize their self-care in the face of life's pressures.
That's such a great question. Thank you for it, Susan, because many adults are asking themselves the same question as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that we all know, I'm just reiterating what is a given, which is a good observation for all of us. You don't need to be a psychologist to say what I'm about to say. What it means is that you can have 5 children and 3 or 4 of them are constantly active and reaching out, and they are full of energy, but you have one child who needs more downtime. So part of the self-care starts with understanding, first of all, what is my temperament? Instead of saying, well, your brothers and sisters are doing that, why don't you join? Just acknowledging I need more sleep, or I don't need more sleep. I need to be sometimes by myself to read. Others need to be interacting with everybody else. The other thing is, I reiterate what I mentioned. I mentioned that we model self-care. And think about this expensive car that is a dream car that you finally bought, but you're not taking care of it. So the fact that you spent a lot of money on it, you know what will happen. Give your child examples from things that are important to them. It's like having an expensive toy or the best computer that is just thrown around and gets damaged. So self-care is an obligation, but what are the steps that you can do for yourself? And review those. That will continue to promote self-care. What is not helpful, and I said that on one of our podcasts in another program of the foundation, is we are sometimes saying we need to work really hard and long hours, and we need to extra stress ourselves because we are going on a holiday next week. That's all very good, and holidays are terrific, especially when they are safe. However, it's like being on a roller coaster. And then when you come down from your roller coaster, you still need to have your day-to-day self-care. So what is self-care that is once in a blue moon, such as a holiday, or maybe not once in a blue moon, maybe 3 times in a blue moon, but at the same time, every single day. When I eat a good meal without rushing out, when I make eye contact with you at the dinner table and I don't answer phone calls and text and constantly criticize something that somebody did wrongly, that is part of what allows me to relax enough to say, self-care was sitting together with all of us and eating a meal without feeling that I must finish it as quickly as possible so that I can stay up later and do my homework or do my leisure activity.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Cole. We've got a couple more questions. As I'd mentioned, if we can't get to your questions today, we will do our very best to follow up with you. So Anne is asking, it is difficult to get boys to express their feelings. Do you have any suggestions?
That's another wonderful question. I'm smiling because it's a very common question that people like me are asked. And the answer is, as you know, Anne, because your name tells me that you're a female parent, is when we went to elementary school, you see little girls or not so little girls or mixed groups talking and voicing opinions and emotions, etc. Our boys do it differently sometimes without stereotyping them, because obviously some of them do, is they're not saying, let's sit down together at lunch and analyze our gossip or analyze our feelings. They are saying, who wants to shoot basketball? So what I found is that sometimes it's a good idea not to say, let's have the big talk, let's sit down and talk. What is helpful is sometimes when I drive my child, they can't escape from the car because they need me to drive them someplace, and they don't need to make eye contact, and I can talk to them differently a little bit. The other thing that I found over the years, and so did my colleagues, is that if you say the 10 questions or the 20 questions, how was school today? And the child says, boring. What they mean is, I'm not going to tell you very much because you might ask me then another 20 questions. So because of that, it's a good idea to say, can I tell you how my day was?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of saying, what was great today? I think that that kind of dialogue and doing it not only on the weekend, in small increments can help.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great, great. So we've got time for one more question. This is from Rachel. What skills can you recommend for a young child age 4? How would one communicate at their level regarding de-stress tools or helping them build their self-esteem and self-sufficiency?
Well, another very helpful question for the foundation. And
Mm-hmm.
the first thing I would do, because time is short, is to tell you that some of the programs and some of the booklets, we distributed over 2 million booklets and growing, that you can download and review. So that is one place to go. I think that sometimes playing distress games, I recall one activity that many are doing and embedding in this the stress strategies that we have is, if I teach my child to do deep breathing, it's really kind of boring and they don't like it. It's strange. But if I say, let's pretend that this is a balloon that we are blowing up, and then the balloon is losing its power, that is appropriate. The other thing is that sometimes it's a good idea, and if you go to Imagination Press, not Imagination Press, Imagination Press, .org, you will see by age group and by topic very, very good books that are written for kids, but they all have sections. It's through the American Psychological Association, very popular. They all have sections for parents with strategies. So sometimes if I sit with a 4-year-old and read a story, and it's safe to talk about the animals in the story and how they can be less upset or braver, that is allowing for a conversation. The other thing is, of course, through artwork. So identify not what you want your child to be distressed with as a tool, but what is going to be fun for them to do together with you, and make sure that we listen even when they are younger than 4 to their choice activities, because imposing hours can be a stress factor by itself.
Right. Okay, great. So we do have a few more questions, but we will answer them in our follow-up email. At this point, I mean, I think it was a really great segue, Dr. Cole, in terms of talking about other kinds of strategies that can help support young kids. We have a program called Kids Have Stress Too, and this is a program that is it's evidence-based, it's curriculum-focused, and it is offered for kids from preschool, kindergarten, grades 1 to 3, grades 4 to 6, grades 7 to 9, and 9 to 12. And those are our stress lessons programs that we can talk about. But essentially, these are how-to guides that really help to support professionals in being able to teach young people what are the kinds of stress strategies that they can use that can help to mitigate toxic stress over time. So what we're really very much interested in is helping to promote a well-being and positive mental health. And so if we can help to instill these kinds of strategies at a young age, then hopefully they'll be able to call on them throughout their lives. So I'd encourage you to take a look at our Kids Have Stress Too programs. They are all located on our website, which is www.psychologyfoundation.org. And likewise, as I mentioned, our stress lessons. This is our program that is geared specifically towards adolescents and a little bit older youth up to age 18 or grade 12. And likewise, these are programs that are developmentally appropriate for kids, or for youth, I should say. and really focus on the peer group, as we were talking about, recognizing that a lot of young people really gain their sort of insight and ideas around strategies from their peers. So I'd encourage you to take a look at those as well. And so we're just wrapping up here, and I wanted to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Ester Cole for guiding us through this really deep topic. I think that what is evident to me is that we've got a lot more to share in the future, and I hope that you might return at some point to help us. You're clearly an expert in the field, and we really appreciate all your help.
And if I may, one last thing to say to all of you, I thank you for giving up your lunch hour, even if you are eating your lunch instead of having a walk. So I thank you for participating. And last but not least, if you did not learn anything today, and it just meant that everything you heard, you know, that is terrific. This means that it's confirming what you thought you knew. If you are taking away even one idea and one source of information about anything that was discussed, that by itself is a very good achievement for all of us collectively. So I thank you and wish you a very productive continuation of the day.
Great. Thank you so much. And we hope that you will join us again for webinars, all of you out there. We will be having our next webinar in April, so please stay tuned. Thank you very much, and we encourage your feedback. This is our first, this is my first webinar. So if you've got any feedback as far as how the production or how we can do things differently, and certainly topics that we would like to cover in the future, please feel free to be in touch with us. So thanks again. Bye-bye.
Bye.